When's it going to not only be the manager's fault?
No.
You keep telling me we've got these world-class players, but then it's the manager's fault, and it's always we've had all these golden generations, and it's always the manager's fault. Why is it always the manager's fault?
I think the point is...
Who is Spain's manager?
Enrique.
I don't know. I've got no idea, and neither do you.
Iglesias.
Precisely. Do you think Spain are playing the way they are because it's just the manager? No, it's not. It's embedded in their culture, the way they play.
So, let's talk about Spain's football culture. 2 Euros and a World Cup in a space of 4 years. They dazzled the world with their tiki-taka, their possession-based football. It was fantastic. Or at least it was for a while. Then in 2014, they went out getting battered 5-1 by the Netherlands. In 16, they lost half the matches they played, and from there on out, it only got worse. In 2018, they only won one match. They went out to Russia despite holding 79% of possession and putting out 23 shots. 4 years later, nothing had changed. 77% possession against Morocco, 13 shots and not a single goal. Spain had been found out. The rest of the world had found the antidote. Sit back, soak in the pressure, and put blood, sweat and tears into every counter-attack and set piece. It was, at times, humiliating. Ever since Del Bosque left, they went through Lopetegui, Hierro, Luis Enrique and Moreno, each of them promising a solution, a revolution, talking about modernizing the team, and yet, nothing changed. They had waited 44 years for the first of those 3 titles, and now there was a sense of worry in the air that they'd be forced to wait another 44 for the next one. And I'll give you one thing, when they appointed De La Fuente as the new manager, a lot of Spanish supporters had that same question. Who even is that guy? I mean, if you researched his name, it was all kind of scary and not in a good way. The guy was 61, and though as a player he had played a significant role in taking Bilbao to their last golden era, taking 2 La Liga titles in a row, as a manager, his only senior coaching job had been a terrible spell with Alaves in Spain's 4th tier 13 years ago, and even there, he got to sack 11 matches later. But well, there was a key word in that sentence: senior. You see, less than 2 years after being dismissed by Alaves, De La Fuente was picked up by the Spanish Federation as their new under-19 manager, and he did wonders. By 2015, he had won the Euros with Rodri, Merino and Unai Simon in his team. In 2018, he jumped up to the under-21s and won it all again, this time with Oyarzabal, Merino, Olmo and Fabian Ruiz. And by 2021, he fell just one step short of the gold at the Olympics, with Pedri joining the team. Once he took over the senior squad and told the press that no one knows Spain's present and future better than me, that is a fact, he wasn't lying. This guy had helped raise these kids into football stars. Their respect for him went much deeper than it would for any other manager, and if with Luis Enrique the rift between culés and Madridistas seemed stronger than ever, De La Fuente was the one man who could bring everyone together. Regardless, things weren't easy. Once, only 2 games in, he ended up being beaten by Scotland and newspapers were relentless. Nothing sells more units than digging a grave for a dead man walking. Ash labeled it a shipwreck. Marca mocked him, asking what was even his plan, but he didn't back down. If some of his previous changes to the formation had people scratching their heads, he doubled down. He went through 50 different players in just his first 10 matches because, well, if he himself was a no-name, then he had no reason to believe other lower-profile players wouldn't be able to get the job done. And only 6 months later, with one of the most underwhelming Spanish lineups in ages, De La Fuente had led them to their first Nations League trophy. And as much as everyone wanted to claim it was a meaningless trophy, in the background, he had already changed everything. As Joselu would say, De La Fuente has built a family here. That's what will make all the difference. And I'll tell you something more. No matter how many people insist on bringing up his lack of resume, most international managers have impressively unremarkable careers. Roberto Martinez has 1 single top-tier title to his name. Tedesco only has 2, and the big man Southgate, who earns 6 times more money than De La Fuente, has 1 trophy to his name, and it's a Toulon tournament, not even a UEFA competition. In fact, aside from that, the only other manager to win an international title was Deschamps, meaning that De La Fuente has at least as many international titles as as all the other 23 managers put together, so, in the end, who's the most qualified for the job? The reality is that, even though on first look his squad had nowhere near the same star power as the likes of France, England or Portugal, with a list being made up of 8 players from Bilbao and Sociedad, while only 7 came from Real Madrid and Barcelona, by the time the Euros were to be played, De La Fuente was on a run of 12 matches with only 1 defeat, meaning that once they were drawn into the group of death and forced to open the tournament against a Croatian team that had been taking the international scene by storm, with one of the best midfield trios in the world, not to mention a handful of promising young talents, even once Gvardiol opened the pre-game conference by admitting he had no idea who De La Fuente was, there was no reason to worry. Once the actual game got going, Croatia's defenders were simply too disorganized, and 25 minutes into what had been a boring match, Morata just flew in between them, slotting in their first goal and making himself the 3rd top scorer in the history of the Euros, only behind Ronaldo and Platini. While just 5 minutes later, Fabian Ruiz twisted and turned in between a sea of red and white checkered shirts, making it 2-0. As the game progressed, it became more and more clear that this was indeed a new Spain, one willing to lose the midfield battle in order to sting back as hard as they could, and by the halftime break, no matter how many chances Croatia had been afforded, Spain were up 3-0 thanks to a trademark cross by Lamine Yamal. And by the time the second half came around, the whole game almost became a caricature of itself. While Spain seemingly scored at every chance they got, Croatia couldn't smack the ball into the net if their lives depended on it, with Petkovic at one point being handed the ball by Unai Simon, not managing to take a shot before Rodri got to him, winning a penalty, missing it, scoring on the rebound, and still being denied by the VAR over encroachment. Even if, in the end, the result didn't accurately describe the match and it became undeniable that the football gods had been on Spain's side, there was no way to look past how deadly they had been, not to mention the fact that, precisely during a tournament that became notorious for slow, cagey football, after 136 games spanning over 16 years, always keeping the ball within their tight grip, Spain had finally finished the match with less possession than their opponents. There was no better way to close out the era of 1-0 wins with 80% possession. This was officially a revolution. Now they were ruthless. But if facing Croatia for the first match was already a test, then having to beat Italy to clinch the early qualification to the knockout stage was even worse. These were the holding champions, the team that had knocked them out of the previous tournament, the ones they had to beat the last time they took the title. It was a mammoth fixture, but instead, it almost turned into a bloodbath. Spain didn't just dominate, they finished the match with 20 shots and 6 big chances, while Italy could barely get one on target. Hadn't it been for Donnarumma, who knows what the final result would have been. But thanks to him, Spain had to depend on Calafiori, one of the tournament's standout players, to score an own goal. As they say in Portugal, the stain always falls on the cleanest sheets. Regardless, 20 minutes before the end of the match, the Spanish fans were already confident enough that they started shouting "Olé!" And that should have been the first sign that they'd become champions. For the final group stage match, De La Fuente made 10 changes, not allowing a single player to start all 3 group stage matches. He was standing by his word that every player in the team had a purpose, and that actually changed everything. Because if Dani Olmo had so far been overlooked, barely getting to play, that day, even though UEFA would hand the award to Ferran Torres, Olmo not only assisted their only goal but put in a performance that got many insisting that he just had to be in the team. Still, for a while, that had to be put on hold because now it was time for the knockout stage. When Spain drew Georgia, many felt the urge to say that they had gotten an easy draw, but the reality is that their side of the bracket was just horrendous. Portugal, France, Belgium and Germany. It seemed the winner would be decided long before the final, but no matter what, they knew they had to hold their horses, because underestimating a team that aside from Kvaradona had Mikał Tadze, the tournament's top scorer, as well as Mamardashvili, the most informed goalkeeper in Europe, wasn't a good idea. Even though in qualifying, Spain had humiliated them 10-2 on aggregate, ever since then, motivated by the fact this was their first ever presence in the Euros final stage, Georgia had made it through their group impressively, even beating Portugal 2-0. Meaning that, when 18 minutes in, with Mamardashvili seeming unbeatable, Lenormand gifted them the opening goal, Spain looked to be in trouble again. For 3 minutes, the memories from Russia and Morocco rushed back into the minds of every Spaniard watching, but this time, Spain were different. Not only did the the players not look too bothered, but before the halftime break, Kitaishvili went down injured, and only a few minutes later, with Hodder taking a hold of the game, he tried to limp towards him to stop his shot, but it was too late. Hodder got his goal, Kitaishvili was subbed off, and only 6 minutes into the second half, right after Kvaratskhelia spiked every Spaniard's heart rate with a strike all the way from midfield, Yamal put in another trademark cross, and as much as Mamardashvili still got a hand on it, Fabian Ruiz put Spain in front. And with everyone focused on Yamal, in the 75th minute, Williams buried his shot into the net while the man of the moment, Dani Olmo, made the most of the few minutes he got, closing out the match with a goal to make it 4-1. Once again, the quiet favorites had steamrolled their opposition, but well, now it was time to face Germany. What can I say about this team? If you asked me before the tournament, I thought they'd be the ones to take the trophy. I still think they were the second best team. In an alternate universe, this could have easily been the final. It still was probably the best game in the tournament, but really, Spain hadn't lost a competitive match to Germany since '88, and they weren't gonna let go of that record. First things first, 8 minutes in, Pedri went out injured, which would be really sad had it not meant that suddenly Dani Olmo had gotten a make-it-or-break-it opportunity to prove his word, and damn. After a tough first half, Yamal put Olmo through at the edge of the penalty area, and with only his second shot, he put Spain in front. For the remaining 39 minutes, the battle went on. Suddenly, it was Germany who took a hold of the game. Füllkrug hit the post, Havertz nearly made Unai Simon look like an idiot. Then, De La Fuente risked it all, bringing off all three of his strikers in exchange for Oyarzabal, Merino and Torres. And in the last minute, Wirtz brought down the stadium, volleying in the equalizer. Throughout the first 29 minutes of extra time, you could almost hear the doubters blaming their eventual defeat on De La Fuente's decisions, but in the meantime, he had made one more. Joselu, the most infamous striker on the planet, had come in, and in his own words, 5 minutes before the end of the match, I went up to Olmo and asked him one thing: cut inside and ping the ball into the box. I'll pin back one of the defenders and Merino will have all the space in the world to crash in. And that's exactly what they did. Olmo was the man of the match, and Merino got to run around the corner flag celebrating the biggest goal of his career, just as his father had 23 years before in that same stadium. But it wasn't all good. Before the match ended, Carvajal was shown a red card, Pedri was on a stretcher, Joselu himself had come in for an injured Fabian Ruiz, Norma was suspended on yellow cards, Olmo had picked up a knock. Hell, for a second, thanks to a mistake in the transmission, half of Spain thought Morata would miss a semi-final as well. And waiting for them there was France, the same team that had been to both of the previous two World Cup finals, the team that had just beat them at the last Nations League final. No matter how much France had been underperforming, getting to the semis without scoring a single open play goal, with so many Spanish players lacking fitness or just out of the match, the stakes were incredibly high. Spain would be forced to start the match with Jesus Navas at right back, literally the last man standing from their 2010 World Cup winning squad, the oldest to ever play a semi-final, and it'd be head-to-head against Kylian Mbappe. Not to mention that on the opposite side, 16-year-old Lamine Yamal was having to deal with Rabiot playing mental games, claiming that he would have to do much more if he was to ever overcome the pressure his teammates would put on him. Once the match began, Navas couldn't even last 10 minutes before allowing Mbappe to get his first proper goal contribution of the tournament, assisting none other than Kolo Muani, who after 5 months without scoring a goal for club and country, decided it was the perfect moment to put Spain in the worst possible scenario. But you know what they say, good teams play great games on a good day, great teams play great matches when everything is against them, and Spain are the greatest in Europe. In the space of 17 minutes, first Yamal noticed no one was expecting him to take a shot and hit a stunning curler right into the top corner, and then, guess who? Dani Olmo got the ball from a lackluster clearance, and with 2 nasty touches, he got away and smacked the volley in. 5 contributions in 4 matches to get Spain to the final when at first, he wasn't even supposed to be on the pitch. Before the match ended, Mbappe managed to send Navas out on a stretcher. Deschamps brought in all the troops, Barcola, Griezmann, Camavinga, and even all-time top scorer Olivier Giroud, but nothing was enough. And once the whistle was heard, Yamal, the man of the match, had one final note. He ran up to the cameras and told Rabiot, "Talk to me now." With one match separating them from eternal glory, De La Fuente and his troops had to go precisely against the team that represented everything they were against. Southgate was a clueless manager who just happened to earn the biggest salary in Europe. Their $1 billion squad was a disjointed mess stacked with superstar names: Bellingham, La Liga's Player of the Year; Foden, the Premier League's Player of the Year; Harry Kane, the Bundesliga top scorer. But meanwhile, it was Spain who had become the first team in the tournament's history to win 6 matches consecutively, taking out 3 former world champions in the process, while England had gotten to the final with only 1 win in regulation time, struggling to beat Switzerland, Serbia and Slovenia, and only defeating the Netherlands thanks to a penalty that even Jamie Carragher admitted should have never been awarded. And so, at 15-11 on the 14th of July 2024, 10 men and 1 kid ran towards the pitch in the same stadium where Jesse Owens had once ran. It was time to make history. England went in, sitting deep, playing on the counter, so nervous that players made passes to the opposition, some even out of bounds. 8 minutes in, they held only 17% of possession. By the 25-minute mark, Kane had only gotten 4 touches on the ball. By the halftime break, Southgate was thanking the Lord the game was still stuck at a goalless draw. But just as it restarted, even with Rodri going out injured, Yamal quickly caught their low block off guard and put through Nico Williams, who came blasting down the left flank to put them in front. For the next 25 minutes, the situation only seemed to be getting more dire for England, but well, if there's one thing Cole Palmer has shown this season, is that he is kind of inevitable. So, only 3 minutes after coming in, with England yet to get a shot off from inside the box in the second half, he put in the coldest strike to tie the match, and the whole world sat up for a second. Everyone was behind Spain. A win for them was a win for football, but as everyone began to worry, they didn't even know De La Fuente had already found a solution. Before Palmer had even come in, so had Oyarzabal, and with the clock counting down towards extra time, he and Cucurella played the most important 1-2 in the history of Spanish football, and right on the edge of offside, Oyarzabal finished England off. For a second, the stadium held their breaths, waiting for the VAR, and the goal was given. Then Dani Olmo again made the goal line clearance of the year, and suddenly, with 15 goals, more than any other team in history, Spain were European champions. The first with 7 wins from 7 matches, their 4th title to go above Germany as the all-time leaders, leading in almost any meaningful metric. Even Gary Lineker admitted, this is a hard defeat for England, but a victory for attacking football. Rodri, a defensive midfielder, took the Player of the Tournament award. Nico Williams took the Finals Man of the Match. Olmo, the ugly duckling, took the Golden Boot. Morata, after so much criticism, after threatening to leave the national team over the fans' lack of respect, got to lift the trophy as the captain. Yamal, now 17, topped the tournament for assists and took the Young Player of the Tournament award, while De La Fuente, the man nobody knew, proved everyone wrong.